Can y'all hear that?
No, I don't hear a thing.
You hear that?
Mm-mm.
Y'all
Not
can
at
hear that?
all.
They probably took the sound off. That's crazy. Well, welcome to the Black Butterfly Podcast. Uh, you are now in the cocoon room. My name is Eugene. Well, I'll say Amaru. I want to get my government name out there because we know a lot of y'all kind of shady. But go ahead.
Hi, hello. This is Candace. Welcome to the Cocoon Room, and I am the host of Black Butterfly.
And we have a guest, and like to introduce yourself, brother, because we wouldn't do you fair justice. But go ahead, do your thing.
Hey man, I'm Greg Meriweather, local antagonist, aka the angry black man with brilliance, and it's just a pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. We're glad to have you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So what we want to do is, before we start anything, we would like to thank you for coming on the show, obviously. But on top of that, we like to open it up for thoughts. Our protocols usually we open up for scripture today, and then we get into our conversation. But before we get into all of that, you guys have any opening thoughts for today?
I don't actually. You know what? I sent you a email earlier, and I want to, as we go through the show, I want you to kind of touch base on that and tell me your thoughts about it. I think I sent it to you as well, Maru and Gregory. I sent it to you. You guys remember that earlier?
I'm probably dead. I'm sorry, but I'll take a look in a minute.
Okay, so it was just real quick to refresh your memory. They were talking about in Houston, Texas, because I know we're going to talk a lot about what's happening with our youth, you know, with our African American males, with our African American females, or just our people of color. So I seen that they were closing 28 libraries, and they were going to replace them with centers for kids who have behavior problems. So just really wanted to get some input from you guys and talk about how you felt about that.
But go ahead, you're the guest, so let you do your thing.
You know, it's really a catch-22. You know, when I think about it as a whole, because as an author, I'm challenged with us because I think that there's so much information in books, but I'm also challenged with the fact that we don't do a good job of picking them up because there's so much information that we could find, and I think that if we start reading more, then I think that we would be more equipped with being able to fight against some of the systems that we have to fight against, but also having the knowledge to understand and see when we are being manipulated by said system. Do I think it's good for us to have centers that maybe focus on some behavioral things or some issues that we face, maybe whether it be mental health challenges or whatever? I think it's good, but also at the same time, do I think it's good to just eliminate so much, so many spaces with education? So it's a catch-22 for me. But I would love to see us become more knowledgeable. I think a lot of times when we need help, they say they're giving us help, but it's really not the help we need. It's the help that it's perceived as help. But Black people ain't crazy. I think we have to understand that someone has fed us this thing of mental health issues. Because if you live a life of blight where people create the ghetto, where people create poverty, where people create blight, and then you react based on what it is that they've created, then they want to deem you crazy. You hurt what's close to you. And that goes for, that we don't hear about white on white crime, but you hurt what's close to you. But if they create the jungle and we live as if we're in the jungle, but they never take the blame for creating the jungle, the mental health starts with them. And it's like when it's all said and done, I think that if we created a system that really fixed mental health, it would start with the mental health issue of racism first.
Okay. I love that. And for people who just joined in and don't know, I know we're here in Indiana, but when I read the article, I thought I was saddened by it because they talked about 28 libraries in Houston, Texas that are going to close, and they're going to replace them with behavior centers. However, the behavior centers are not going to talk about mental health or trauma or other things that affect children at home, like sexual abuse or domestic violence. They're strictly closing them to put kids who need to finish their schoolwork inside of the class. So they're isolating them from the regular students, ostracizing them, putting them in these behavior centers. And for me, the first thing I thought of when I seen it was the school to prison pipeline. That's what I thought of. So that's why I sent you the information.
Absolutely. But you know what? Even in our schools, I've had the pleasure or displeasure of being inside some high schools. And when you realize that the discipline that once was inside schools is no longer there, and I call it being free enough to make bad decisions. You see that you see that in all the school systems where we are. You see now that there's no discipline that would create this environment of us not going to prison, and there's big money in it. So when it's all said and done, it's like we have to become better agents of creating the systems that allow us to thrive, as opposed to waiting on them, because anything that we wait on from them usually feeds their pockets while we perish.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. So I just really sent you guys that because I wanted to know your thoughts on it, because I know you guys are really all about educating and teaching people of color how to actually succeed. So thanks.
So as we move along, we would like to go with our what do you want to do? You want to do scripture first, or you want to do
we can do the scripture.
Okay, so I'm going to do scripture today. And so our scripture today is Deuteronomy 31:6, and I'll let you do next. Go ahead.
Yes. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God is with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And I specifically chose this scripture because I had watched, did not know Gregory, but I had watched, someone had tagged him in a post, and I was watching his podcast or just his information, and was very interested, and I see that he is very courageous. He doesn't care if he is speaking to the governor or speaking to the mayor or speaking to the city councilmen. He's very courageous, and he's very firm on what he believes in. So oftentimes when people are trying to get government funding, they have to tiptoe around the things that they want to say. But I think that Gregory was not that type of person. So that is why I reached out to him and wanted him to actually come to on the show, because sometimes people lose their courage to say what they want to say because of, employment or seeking out money from federal sources and then government officials.
So like before we go, so I'm gonna set you up. So what happened? And great verse there, great scripture right there, Candace. And it was cool because I don't know if it was like a day or two. She calls me, like, "Hey, we gotta get this guy on the show." She's like, "He's in Indianapolis. He's doing a lot of good things." Da, da, da. And so had me watch it, and I was blown away because I thought I was looking at myself, right? Because kind of the same things, and we spoke about it before the show, that I sink my teeth into. You're in that space also, and it's refreshing because obviously we operate in silos. We in little Milwaukee or Gary or Indianapolis per se. We don't think people's paying attention to some of the content we're putting out there, but it's very powerful. The social media is very powerful because now you can actually see and connect with people in other areas and start, doing grassroots movements. And so the live was very profound because you touched on a lot of points. Especially Candace, obviously she's passionate about too. And so, as I said before, just like Gary, just like any other city has their, challenges, Indianapolis does too. We also have a lot of people, a lot of family that lives in Indianapolis, right? Because they moved from Gary down south to Indianapolis. And so before we get started, I'd like to ask one of the first questions I would like to ask, what got you in this space? What motivated you to be in this space that you're in now?
Oh man, it's interesting because I think about my son currently, who is 20, and he says in his mind he's never experienced racism. By the time I was 20, I had probably experienced racism all my life. And then once I went into corporate America, it was interesting because I just took a position in leadership where I recognized that the people without voices were always being duped. And I realized that I was always the person being reprimanded because I always fought for them. And so from that perspective, it just made me really take it on a larger scale. And then I started really becoming vocal. And then I started the Black on Black Radio Network probably over 10 years ago. And I started my show. And when I started my show, I just started getting, I love what you all are doing, because I started getting national guests and bringing people on, from the Wahida Clarks to the Kwans to Umar Johnson. Just people just start coming. And at that point, it was just like I just had this thing where I was bringing these voices on. And the city of Indianapolis really started listening to that. Then I became the host of the Black Expo television show. And after that, I became the strategic initiatives liaison for the city of Indianapolis. And then I just kept moving. And then I was a consultant for the city. But it was just all a matter of being loud. It was just a matter of saying that I don't watch things be a certain way without saying something about it, and being courageous enough. And that's just what God gave me, because I'm just like, I'm not afraid of anyone. And that's probably based on how I grew up. But I'm just not that fearful dude. And I think that when you look around, I'll tell y'all the truth. I've tried to stop 1,000 times. And every time I stop, I listen to see if anyone else is saying anything. Mm-hmm. A lot of dudes say stuff after I say it. Mm-hmm. Or they'll be in a room with me when I say it, then they'll say it live before I say it. Mm-hmm. But if I don't say anything, most people ain't saying nothing, because most of them are trying to be in the regime, mm-hmm. as opposed to being like, I don't need to be in the regime. Just just allow my people to be the people that they are without y'all doing anything to prohibit it. And so my way of becoming who I am, and one is God given, and two, I just walked in the door and became and really lived as who I am every single day. Like this arm right here, this arm is filled with civil rights leaders, civil rights antagonists. I mean, you name them, they on my arm. And it's like, because I walk with this every single day, because it is who I naturally am, and I couldn't change it if I tried.
So one of the first questions that we have for you, because you were so passionate about some of the things we're talking about, what are the current issues that Black people are facing in Indianapolis?
Man, in Indianapolis, Black people they have a plethora of issues. One, we are number one in poverty. Mm-hmm. We are last in median household incomes, last in housing, first as far as it relates to jail, we're probably first in evictions, first in food deserts, first in poor air and water quality in our communities. So when you look at it, Black people are, from what I've investigated, we are first in everything bad and last in everything good in Indianapolis. When I was running for mayor, before I made the decision, I made the decision to drop from the mayoral race before the primaries, which I'll honestly say I regret. But I met with a group of people and we made that decision. But it's like, those were the things I spoke about. I think we've made a horrible decision in keeping the mayor that we have. I think that Black people in Indianapolis or Indiana is recognized as the northernmost southern state.
Really?
So you realize that Indiana operates along the lines of Mississippi, Alabama, and all the rest. And you realize that Black people are utilized they pick certain Black people. Mm-hmm. And those Black people get to thrive, but their responsibility is to suppress the other Black people. Mm-hmm. So if I had to pick the biggest issue, if I had to take it from Brother Rizza Islam, he said that if we gonna make some progress, the turncoats cannot be involved.
Yes, they cannot be involved. Yes,
we have to exile the people who partner with the people who hurt us. Mm-hmm. So any other community says, if you ain't with me, you against me. Even if you got the complexion, even if you from the hood, even if you part of, even if you family, if you doing anything to partner with the people who hurt me, then we ain't jiving. And in Indianapolis, you recognize the church has turned. You recognize most of your community leaders ain't real. You recognize the education system ain't real. The brother in government ain't real. So you look at all these people. Like I said, I was just talking to my brother and I said, the Indiana Business Journal just came out with the 250 most influential people in the state of Indiana. 30 something odd of them were Black. Okay. It was probably 300 people, but 30 something of them were Black. And then when I looked at the list, and it was funny because I had some people who nominated me from a civic leader perspective, but the brother that they picked, I can't even get into him. Can I say his name?
Go ahead.
Okay, Charles Harrison, the brother that runs the 10-Point Coalition. They picked him. So he said, he said he came to Gary and he was trying to bring him there and he went to Ohio. I said, if the 10-Point Coalition was actually working, it would be working all over the country. But they really just ambulance chasers that the white folk like to recognize simply because it looks like something's being done that's not really being done. But they call him on the news every week because he know he's looking for checks. And at that point, they say, Charles, say something. Act like you fixing something, and then Charles does it, and now he's being one of the most influential people in the state of Indiana, but he ain't even influential in the Black community.
I think I saw something about that because when he said he was doing something in Chicago or something.
Oh man, he says he's everywhere. He says he's everywhere. Yeah. When it's all said and done, you don't see the results.
Yeah.
What was he doing before he became over the 10-Point Coalition?
He's just a pastor of a church.
I thought so. I was
just a pastor of a church with no influence in his own neighborhood. Yeah.
Oh wow, the new leader of
no, his own neighborhood don't even like him. But it's a group of pastors here in Indianapolis. They run to the governor's mansion and they sit and they wait on the governor to say what they're going to do. And they get put on all kind of, they get put on boards. They get put on committees in the state, areas where they may be able to get a check. And so at that point, they operate with the governor or the government. And then you have to realize, and this is why I love what y'all doing, then the media is in the forefront. So that it sells it to Black people that these are the people that y'all need to go to when y'all need something done. When in all truth, they take what you give them, they ball it up, they throw it away, and they tell them, I got them at bay. And that's the game that we play now.
And then see, and we've already had a situation like that. We're not gonna say no names, but
we call them the gatekeeper. We call them the gatekeeper of Gary, even though we have them in Indianapolis. I've faced gatekeepers in Indianapolis. I've faced gatekeepers in Gary. It's really sad, and oftentimes the gatekeepers are the ones that are getting all the funding to do all of the projects.
But can we be real on this? And it hurts our hearts, but people hate it when I say this. I say, if you look at the people who were with Dr. King, once they saw King land in the box, all of them joined the system that killed him.
You actually have a question too. Marcus Edwards had a question for you. Can you post it, Maru? Marcus says that the new leader of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Dr. Reverend Frederick Douglass Haynes III, who they picked to replace Jesse Jackson. And as we all know, Al Sharpton, Jesse, a lot of times they were used as gatekeepers, just to be honest. So I believe that's why Marcus put that question up there. So if you could speak to that.
I mean, when you think about it, man, Al Sharpton is Al has done some phenomenal work. But now when you look at Al Sharpton, I think he's a member of one of the most expensive social clubs in New York City now. Wow. And you realize that fight gets changed when a dollar is in play. It's different when it's just in your heart. Most of these dudes are loud enough to get brought up in this, to get put in the system. Most of these dudes are loud enough to say, so that the system will come and say, man, you are so loud and you barking and you making us look a certain way. What can we do to work with you? And then they get in there and these things start moving and they start making money, and all of a sudden that voice goes away. Mm-hmm. And if the voice don't go away, then they try to criminalize you. So when we look at it, if you stick to it, and you in Indianapolis, man, my voice has been so strong. I ain't worked in the city of Indianapolis in over 10 years because ain't nobody messing with me. Not even the black organizations mess with me. I have been up for being the CEO for at least 2 black organizations in the city of Indianapolis, and none of them will pick me. That includes 100 Black Men of Indianapolis, who just happened to win the National Chapter of the Year award. But it's 100 Black men that's quiet as hell in the city of Indianapolis. But when it's all said and done, those are the types of organizations that white folk will acknowledge simply because they hide behind the name of Black, yet do nothing. They do something like if you look at those organizations, they go get the kids that are probably already on the path of success. They don't go get Ray and JoJo and Nuck. They don't go get them. They don't go across the street. They don't go across the track. They don't go into the hood. They go get them, and then they promote it like we converting boys. Y'all ain't converting nothing, because when it's all said and done, they can't even deal with a dude like me. Mm-hmm. And so when it's all said and done, I look at these situations in these organizations and how leaders are being placed. We have to be the agents of our own success. Don't let them pick our leaders. That's a new phenomenon. When we think about it, they wouldn't have picked Malcolm.
Nah.
They wouldn't have picked Fred Hampton.
Nah, they sure wouldn't.
They wouldn't have picked the Panthers. But when we look at how the movements took place, our leaders, I think Malcolm X is the greatest civil rights leader to ever walk the earth.
Yes.
I absolutely do. Over King. And when it's all said and done, they wouldn't have picked Malcolm. Malcolm don't have no national holiday.
No.
They don't want to recognize that, because if you recognize him for what he is, it'll change our mentality, because we'll start saying, why? But we don't get that. And in Indiana, on the Indianapolis anniversary, Martin Luther King, 50th anniversary of his murder, you know who they put on the front page of the paper in Indianapolis? Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy signed the paper for J. Edgar Hoover to do COINTELPRO on Martin Luther King Jr. And we in Indianapolis, the Negroes in Indianapolis are so shallow and lost. They have a whole park called Kennedy King Park with statues of Kennedy reaching out to King, and Kennedy helped kill him.
And see, see, this is the thing too. Like, I'm with you too, because a lot of times I just sit back and think about this stuff. Like, I go back to your Malcolm X comment. I take off his birthday every year, May 19th, every year.
True.
People need to understand the work that brother was doing, what his mindset was back then. He was doing in the 60s. I watch A Ballad and a Bullet every year, if not twice a year, because if you listen to that man's speech it resonates today. And people do not really understand where he was moving with that. Like what you were saying, get away from the system. Man. Have your own system. You know, I have a lot of debates with a lot of people, close friends of mine, and one of the things which it really irritates me, because basically, like, I always put it to them like this. I said, you know, we've been begging for white people to treat us right for almost over 420 some years. They've never treated us right. Why do we keep begging? Why don't we start doing our own thing? Why don't we start building our own communities? And that's why this podcast was started, because it's to infuse some of those ideas and to wake up. Like, what are we doing? We're repeating the same thing. And shout out to our ancestors, because they tried so hard to do what they felt was right, and it was not, because a lot of things they got told and lied to about, and is resonating today. Keep voting, and like Just go on and explain what we were talking about before. He was talking about how Democratic cities are the ones with the highest violence rate, right? And the murder rates and stuff. And
highest violence, highest poverty. Black people are on the bottom in most of those cities. Absolutely. So from your Phillies to Chicago to Atlanta to all those cities, to all them places where you look and there's a high democratic system, Black people are on the bottom and they vote for their own demise. Because they believe in the program. They believe the program is the thing that makes the change.
No.
They believe that independence and unity is what makes the change. It's not the program. Most of the time, man, it's just like with how we look now, what we call an activist. Mm-hmm. What we now call activists are people who go and they make a phone call and they call the government. They start a 501c3. They call some people. They take food that's already that they ain't even got. They don't go to their own farm. They go to this place. They call this organization. They give them food. They grab their camera. They get on their camera and act like they changing the community by feeding Black folk outside, and Black folk cheer. Yeah. Oh my God, you changing. How am I changing stuff if I'm feeding the same people every week? If you got to keep coming back, then I ain't changed a damn thing. I mean, I've enabled you. We forgot what it meant to teach a man to fish.
Exactly. Yes. That was the goal of the podcast. I looked around and I seen, and I've been seeing it, but going to college, working multiple jobs, trying to get your life established. And I always said, when I get into a position where I can reach back and help, I'm going to do that. I always help with like time and voice. But now I'm like, we have all these platforms. If we're just sitting around absolutely doing nothing, we're not teaching, we're not educating, then we are just as worse as the people who are oppressing us. And so the podcast was to help educate, because a lot of our brothers and sisters, they've made it. They, what you call made it, but they will not reach back. As long as their family, their immediate family is okay, they'll help some people, but they won't educate. They are, they're gatekeepers as well. They'll say, well, I've made it and maybe 5 of us made it, but I don't want 10 of us to make it, because if I help them, I might stop getting my promotions or my accolades or my congratulations and things like that. So they'll just leave you stuck, and they'll know how to help you, and they'll see you struggle and they won't. So I felt very sad about that. And that's why I called Amaru. I said, hey, I've been trying to get this podcast out for like 5 years, and I've been talking to people and asking people, and everybody's so busy and nobody, is trying to plug in. And he said, great, I'll do it, so that's why when I heard you speak, you were so passionate, and I was like, wait, we got to get this brother on the show.
Well, Candace, one of the sad things about it is what we've defined as success. Our demise is always spoke of as a unit. Mm-hmm. They don't say some Black people are killing each other. They say Black people.
Yeah,
Black on Black. Poverty. They don't speak of individual poverty. They speak of our poverty as a unit. So when they have trained us to island ourselves when it comes to success. But once you realize, because we got into that zone and we didn't realize that their funnel made us become individualistic as opposed to communal. So all of a sudden we got in that funnel, and all of a sudden we start saying, I'm the only Black person in this department doing blah. I'm the only Black person that did blah, as opposed to saying my success is defined by me bringing another Black person so that I'm not the only Black person, so that we can start a system to build a community of us that are more successful. The other thing that they have trained us to do, which is really the sick thing, we don't reach close to pull up.
Nope.
We reach all the way to the bottom, trying to find success of lifting someone all the way from the bottom, as opposed to grabbing someone who is almost where you are and reaching up and building them up. And that's a shorter reach with a shorter distance to get to that success of having a massive number. But instead, all our families, they'll look at you and say, you all right, so we ain't gonna give her an extra $1,000 to finish that class or this or that. We're gonna go down here and we're gonna give this dude that ain't even trying, we're gonna give him a car, we're gonna give him $1,000, we're gonna pay his rent, and he's gonna sit back like what? But the ones that are closest to success in our communities are the ones who receive the least help. And we got to change that mentality and stop saying, oh, no, you got to look at the people who are striving and say, reach from a shorter distance and pull them up. And then y'all have the commitment of saying, once I pull you, you must do the same. And then we can pull together and we can reach up together. And then we develop this community of these people who are pulling from a shorter distance and not from the bottom.
Shout out to NABA because National Association of Black Accountants. That's where I was the president when I was in college at UWM, and their whole motto is "Lift as we climb," right? Yeah. And so it goes back to what you were saying as far as reaching back. But one of the things I also like that your comment is on the video, the cell phone. I remember, I'll never forget this, when they had the riots in Milwaukee, and there's a couple of things that happened. One of my friends, he was on the board of a church, right? And so this is literally the story. I'm riding home with my cousin, and I look at the church. I see these tanks at the church. I'm like, what? Because it was like 11 at night. I'm like, what the hell is going on? You got tanks at church. So I text him. He's like, oh, I don't know. This is the night of the riot. I didn't even know it was rioting. I didn't know none of that stuff was happening. So that it went down. It was all, they burned up the block and all that stuff. And what the cool thing out of it, they turned it into a business incubator where they burnt the bank up. People don't really talk about that, but that's what they did. So that's shout out to them for that. But it was literally like 2 days later. So everybody were down there. They was down there, right? And so I'm like, I need to go down there because that's my people. I got to get down there. So I'm down there. I'm down there with my cousin and with my one guy. And so my other friend, the one that was in the church, he was there. And you just seen a lot of young people, right? There were nobody our age. They were like in their teens and early 20s. And I turned to my friend and I was like, leadership needs to be down here. I was like, where? The church is literally, I promise you, blocks from where the incident happened, where the young man got shot at by the police. And I'm like, where's the president of the church? And he was like, well, he talked to the pastor, and the pastor was saying that he didn't feel comfortable being down there. And and what ended up happening was that you had kids. It was so disgusting to me. You had kids on their cell phone, right, in front of the police, and you had, you just had this rip, people, police. And I said, y'all need to put y'all phones up. I said, that's what's wrong with us. You too quick to pick the phone up when some real stuff happened. Also, the gamer was there. I said, you know what? That red and blue stuff don't matter no more. That's about your skin color, brother. I said, because we killing each other over the wrong stuff, shoes and territories and all that stuff. Look who killing us. We killing ourselves, but then you wanna mask up and be like, don't stop killing us unarmed, but we can't stop killing each other. So I was having them conversations with them. Sure. And so it's like we are scared to even confront our own people. I don't care what class you are, you're Black. You go through the same things that the person at the top of the pyramid chain go through. And so we have to, I love that you said that because it burns me up. I hate seeing our people being denigrated and disrespected. But it's the elite Black people that performs their own classism against their own people. And I'm just like, what is that? My mentor, I'll let you go. My mentor said this. He said, classism is worse than racism.
Man, it is the strongest level of racism. Because it's internal. And when you look at it, it's like the internal thing that we do towards each other feeds into that racism that they started. But once we look and say, I ain't them N-words. Mm-hmm. I'm Black, but I ain't them. And so they like that, and I think that we have been caught up in there are so many tentacles to racism. but so many that we have embraced ourselves that now we utilize against each other. That the work it's the Willie Lynch letter.
And they've normalized it. They've normalized it. They don't see anything wrong with it because they've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Amara, are you thirsty?
Yes, I gotta have an alcohol my water. I'm sorry, all day. I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. We're talking about Indianapolis and some of the things that the challenges that are there. One question that we did have was how effective is Indianapolis in education and home ownership as when it relates to African Americans?
Mayor Joe Hogshead is really trying to push this drive on affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Indianapolis was at one point rated number 2 in the nation in evictions. And we have to understand that a lot of that is us. Indianapolis is now becoming one of those cities that is unaffordable. We look a lot like Oakland. We look a lot like the cities in the country that once had a strong Black presence. Because people got to realize Indianapolis has one of the strongest Black presence in the country. 300,000 Black people in the city of Indianapolis. And when you realize that, you understand that the problem is there's never been a real Black movement. That's one thing. So if it were to ever be, it would be Atlanta. Indianapolis should have been Atlanta way before Atlanta. I'm just going to say that. But now it's almost like you've missed the mark because housing never took place. And you realize that we're last in housing. And now you look at this eviction thing and you say a one-bedroom apartment in Indianapolis in a nice area is at least $1,500.
That's correct.
So now you're looking and it's like it's hard to find housing in Indianapolis that Black people can afford. But then you say, well, okay, Mayor Joe, you talk about affordable housing. Now the question becomes, well, what is affordable and who is it? What is affordable to this group of people? Because you've had inflation hit about 6 times. So but the workforce dollar has not increased to that rate. So you look and you say, well, you creating affordable housing, but it looks like affordable housing is still going to be for white people. And Black people still going to have to go. But the challenge again is when no one is speaking on this. No Black people are fighting for this. No Black people are saying we ain't going nowhere. Because I guarantee you this. If a group of Black people went to some outside county of Indianapolis and say, y'all know if y'all don't help us, we gonna move here. Listen, the minute that conversation happens, something gonna change. Because Indiana is a state of 92 counties, and I'll guarantee you, the majority of them are 100% white. So when it's all said and done, if we get anything outside of this city and say, if y'all don't help us stay in Indianapolis, we coming to a city near you. So I guarantee you it'll change. But right now it's just a gimmick, man. It's a game because I don't think that it's when you realize what housing is and you realize the level, the first step of attaining wealth is by owning property and things of that nature. It's never been in their interest. I mean, that's what happened in the Homestead Act and all those things where we were supposed to get property and stuff like that, and it was all taken away. And so when you realize they understand what it means to own a home, and you know that we don't, and so it's like Indianapolis is doing the same thing that most cities across the country are doing. They're making it more and more unaffordable so that we can figure out a way to not be where it is that they are. We're good. We are good for economics in a sense, but again, going backwards, when you realize that we are last in median household income and first or last, however you want to put it, but first in unemployment, it's like that's why we are not bankers. That's why most of our cities don't have brick and mortar banks. Banks are lending institutions. And if you are last in median household income, ain't no need for you to have brick and mortar. That's why we have ATMs. We withdraw.
And you know what's really interesting?
So ain't no reason for us to even give y'all anything to even get loans or anything else. Y'all are withdrawers. So we give you ATMs, and that's what it's going to be.
What's really interesting, last week I called Amaru, and I think he was on his way to Wisconsin or to Chicago, and we were having a conversation about, I was talking to him about my business account, and he basically said that when he was a banker, he noticed that in certain communities, and white communities, they had banks, just as you said, because they know people are building businesses and they're buying house, so they make their money off of home loans and business loans. Whereas in the Black community, he noticed that if it was a bank there, they were charging people who didn't have the money the overdraft fees because they couldn't charge them for mortgage loans or business loans. So they were making all of their money off of people of color on overdraft fees. So essentially, they're making money off of people who don't have it, and then people who are getting, they're using the money that you do have to kind of float loans and things like that to these other communities. And I think that, again, it's predatory, but it's happening all over the United States.
All over. And again, when you look, you don't see a lot of banks. You don't see a lot of banks in our community. You see a lot of ATMs charging you for your money or however they want to do it. But you don't see a lot of that now, because you have to realize what it means to bank. Banking is not just saying I put money here. Banking is saying, oh, I do business. I walk in here. I'm y'all lending my money out because I'm putting some money in. I could come in here and I can get a loan because y'all know I put money in this joint. But when you look at us, that ain't how that works. They're like, just give them ATM because as soon as they put it in, what do they say? Let's be real. They say what? By the time a dollar stays in the Black community for 6 hours.
And it's really supposed to bounce 7 times before you remove it out of your own community.
They consume
6 hours. So if you work 8 hours, by the time you get paid on Friday, it's already gone. But you got 2 hours still to work.
In economics, they say for every dollar earned, African Americans consume 80% of it. So before
and I do remember, even before COVID, it basically said that African Americans had 1.7 trillion in spending power. But if we have 1.7 trillion in spending power, where is our businesses? Where is our wealth?
I think the other part is this: we have to understand that we have been consumed means to devour. Mm-hmm. We have become so we've misunderstood what it means to participate. Participation to us has meant shopping. It hasn't meant investing. It hasn't meant into creating. Segregation taught us that we had to create, which we don't. Now we consume. So if Brother Amaru jumps out and says, I'm gonna start a luxury line that's comparable to Gucci, but I'm gonna charge you $100 less with greater quality than Gucci, we still gonna buy Gucci.
Yep.
Because we feel that putting them on us defines us. And then we say, I ain't them in words. Right? For lack of better examples, he said, and I spent $400 on this just to be like, nigga, you ain't up
on this. Yep. Kanye.
Okay. And they've created this Black person. I hear people, soon as George Floyd gets killed, they pro-Black. But as soon as they say the Gucci outlet has a sale, they don't realize that they pro-white. Because Gucci, I keep asking people, I used to work in the fashion industry. And I said, why do we continue to try to squeeze Africa inside of Europe? It baffles me. It's like you literally, I guarantee you, if you see a 3X Gucci t-shirt, it's fake. They don't make clothes like that. It's like, this is for the slim. This is for them. And we go out there, and that's why he said about the shoes. Ain't nothing new but the shoes. That's how we buy the shoes and the belts. But then if we got about a gear, please, it ain't made for us. But again, they've created this consumer. Think about this. What is one of the biggest things happening right now that they consider activism? Toy drives. But we don't look at fiscal. He noticed we don't look at fiscal years. We don't look at the bottom line and realize where Christmas falls in the fourth quarter. We don't realize that that's the difference between the haves and the have-nots. We don't realize that in one time in 2018, 8 of every $10 went to the 1% because they own everything that you purchase.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, we got activists being rewarded and awarded and looked at and cheered on because they teach your mind that you're not participating in a pagan holiday called Christmas. So all of a sudden, we think that giving young Black kids toys is really helping them get through, where all we're doing is teaching them that when you get $1, you spend $1. Instead of saying, I'd rather have the lights on. I'd rather own the house. I'd rather have some bills paid. I'd rather be able to save. We tell them, how many times have you seen a drive around Christmas time to say, we just gonna pay the book rent. We just gonna pay the rent. We just gonna do something to give you a leg up. But nope, they would rather take toys in war zones, poverty zones, food deserts, and say, I'll give you a toy to make you think you're participating while you're still poor. I would never give them to a toy drive, ever.
And it is baffling because, I blame our people for some of this. We've been, we've been assimilating and just not paying attention to some of this stuff, some of these tactics. And it goes with our word of the day, right? Because I like to keep our flow going, which is courageous. The thing, when you speak truth to power, you're not gonna have a lot of friends. You're not, because stuff that bothers you, if they do something, it's gonna bother you, and you're gonna have to say something, right? And so that's courageous. The people that I communicate on a daily basis, they are very courageous. Sure. I will give the Swahili interpretation, which is jasiri, and the definition is always not deterred by danger or pain, being brave. And so, when I come into just kindred souls like yourself, right, I understand, people think because you're so passionate that you're angry. Fast. And it's like, no, because you're angry. I mean, you're passionate because you're like, what have we been doing all this time? And so I am 100% lock in step with you all the way, because I literally like earlier, I get to alert on my phone, and it's talking about LeBron's school is failing the kids. And I'm about to jump through the roof, because I'm like, so, okay, your school is half funded. You're not even funding your school. Your school is actually funded to your foundation. Mm-hmm. Then, obviously, those parents who are sending their kids to school, they are, obviously, because they're, distressed and they got some issues going on too, they are sending their kids particularly to your school because they want to get the resources, right? Education, right? And his school is below the national standards. And I'm like, so we hear about everything else, but we don't hear about this? And I'm like, you're basically ruining your people, because they're paying taxes for their kids to fail. Yeah. And I'm literally like finna pull my hair out. I'm like, oh my God. And that's the thing. Obama said it best. I'm not an Obama fan. What they did say was true.
Well, we agree on that.
Education is the great equalizer. Sure. And so if you are a $1 billion athlete, you get on social media. If your school is failing, why don't you be dug into your school versus telling us how much money you got and flexing? Like that bothers me. But I digress. Go ahead. But I digress.
When you say education is the great equalizer, I think that's, one of the biggest challenges with education is, what is it?
I agree.
Because I know that we all have rolled the lines of indoctrination to the highest level. And then true education cannot be taught. It must be sought. And when you decide to become educated, you will seek it. And 9 times out of 10, one who is truly educated has to have the justity to go against their cognitive dissonance. Because the pain associated with true education will cause you to either A, be angry, or no longer be silent. When you're indoctrinated, you go along to get along, because that's what indoctrination teaches you.
Silence is complicity.
Hear me.
Period.
Even like you said, we've all been, educated on a book level, right? But your environment, your parents, your support system, other people that you have been around, you learn resilience from them, and it's just not something that's written in a book. And so for me, I am thankful that I had my parents and other people who was in the community that actually gave me a voice, and it wasn't just book work.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Because a lot of people just have book work, and those are the people who they fall in line. And my dad always say, when you go against the grain, you're not going to be popular.
So I'm asking you a question. Who was freer?
You said who was freer?
Who was more free? My parents, who did not have that level of education, my grandparents who did not have that level of education, or myself?
I think probably our grandparents.
I would say grandparents.
Because they learned so much by living it.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting when you look at people who, let's kind of jump off the tracks for a second. But people who have experienced what they believe God is, or you take a preacher who has never been to seminary, and he preaches based on his experience with God, as opposed to this dude who's preaching the business of God. Which one is the greater? The one who has the experience. Because even if you go, I love y'all gave a verse of the day, because even if you go into the text, it says, when they saw the disciples, it said, when they looked upon them, they knew that they were not educated men, but they knew that they had walked with him. So even in that realm, we take these people that, and if you also go into the Bible, it said the people who were the high priests were the educated people, right? Those are the people that went against the way. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. I know we've talked about, I think it was prison to pipeline. I wanted to know your thoughts about incarceration in Indiana, for one, and also in Indianapolis, and how it kind of correlates to what we talk about, like finances, having affordable housing, having employment it's not at the medium, but people actually can be gainfully employed, and they're not having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make their ends meet.
Well, I think it's all a system, because you have to realize that in Indiana literally rates almost last in the country in education. Wow. So people with degrees in Indiana is almost the bottom of the country.
And I know that firsthand. When I had an associate's, I didn't even try. I was still working little side jobs. I had a bachelor's degree. A light popped on after I graduated with my bachelor. I was like, oh my God. They said the American dream. I can't find a job anywhere. So then I went to get all these certifications to be an insurance agent. Then I was like, okay, that's not it. I'm going to go get my master's. And even I read a couple of weeks ago, they said that a Black person's master's degree is equal to a white person's bachelor's degree. I was like, are you serious? Realistically, so that means our bachelor's degree is equal to a white person's high school degree. Diploma. And that right there, it's just disrespectful.
So Indiana carries that out. So that's how you know when they say the northernmost southern state, uneducated state. You are competing and asking people for a job who are less qualified than you and get to tell you no simply because you're Black and educated.
I heard a lot of no's living in Indianapolis. I talk to Maru about it all the time. I heard a lot of no's.
All day. Listen, when I tell you, we were talking about just the logistics and supply chain. Listen, I don't see me.
Nope.
Lucrative business. It's a highly lucrative business. People don't realize. They think, oh, he working a warehouse. Let me tell you something. You get to the top of that, boy, it's $200 and $300 a year.
Yes.
Easily.
Yes.
Easily. And you in a warehouse every day making $200,000, $300,000 a year. Easily. But you wonder why. But for me, I gotta have the paperwork. Them, they just gotta have the time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time when they bring in somebody, they ain't got either.
Nope.
And so
or they got a degree in English or a degree in like theater. How do you be a master? You got a degree. What?
Yeah, I can't community something. I don't know. But I look at, I'm nosy. I look at all they LinkedIn pages. I look at all their background. I'll be like, oh my God. But real talk, Indiana is key on this. This is why Black people need to stand up in Indiana. Because one, you realize it is at the bottom of education. Mm-hmm. It does not, Indiana, I have researched where it says, well, the state of Indiana is kind of like, you really don't have to have a degree to make it here.
Who?
Exactly. Who? When you look at it, again, you are sitting in a room with somebody who can barely read, who is reading your resume, who is filled with all this grand information, and they're going to say, no. And you will be the most qualified person. 9 times out of 10, I will say this. I will go out on a limb and say this. 9 times out of 10, a Black person with experience and education will walk in 90% of these companies and be the most qualified person in that building. And they won't get the job.
Yep.
I remember, and a quick story. So I was an undergrad, and I got connected through Northwestern Mutual to interview with this guy named Paul Weir. He was one of the executives at Harley Davidson, right? And so the guy I was talking about, Dr. Ross, set the interview up, right? So it was like we had to sit down and eat, and then he had our resume, but he'd never seen what we looked like, right? So at the time, my GPA was like 3.9 or something.
Sure.
So I got my little suit on, I'm trying to, my hair was all cut. I did Caesar cut, everything. So we sit there, and he takes a shot of the wine, and he goes, so he's looking at like there's all white people, and then it's me. So he goes, hey, Eugene, he looks at the white guy, and he's like, your resume is impressive. And the guy was like, I'm not Eugene, he is. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. Like it and that was my undergrad. So it already light bulb goes off. I'm like, so because my name is not urbanized, right? So Eugene, you think it's some white dude, right? He probably thought my name was Deontay or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But I was just, and I sat down just like, he really just tried to finesse. Okay. And so then he obviously turned around. We started talking or whatever. But that was 2011. That's when I was just like, okay, this crazy. You know what I'm saying? But go ahead. I digress. Go ahead.
That's the world we live in.
We have a quick comment from you. It's from Frank James. He says that they came up with overqualified just to say no. And I actually was told that before. You know, when you were a kid, how you always see it on TV. Oh, you're overqualified for this position. Yeah. And I was like, you know, I'm never going to be told that. But I think I was, yeah, they told me that. I think I had just finished my bachelor's degree or maybe finished my master's. And they was like, oh, yeah, you're overqualified. And I look like, what?
Or they'll flat out be like, you don't want to do this. This is not, you're way beyond this level. And it'll be and you'll be sitting there wanting 60, and really they paying 160, and they'll tell you, nah, you're way too good for this. And you look like, no, I'll take it.
Right.
Oh, they rough with it, man. It's so bad.
That's James Bullock. Shout out to Mr. Bullock. But
James.
I remember, I never forget when I had graduated with my MBA, and so I'm looking for jobs, right? So I'm literally interviewing for jobs in Chicago. The company name was Blue Air. It was an air conditioning company.
Oh, yeah. But he don't put him on blast. He don't even say the name.
On blast. So I'm literally sitting there. The lady says to me, she says, everything's fine. She said, but you want to work here? I'm like, yeah. She was like, I think you're going to leave. And I'm just like, dang, and I told my wife, and she couldn't believe it. I said, I can't believe she said, she's like, we won't hire you because of my qualifications. Well, so in the accounting field, they like to hop jobs all the time, which is fine, right? Whites do it all the time. Why would you tell me that? You know what I'm saying? But I was just like, wow, she really came out. She's like, no, we're not going to hire you because I think I was coming in as I got my MBA, but I never had an accounting position. So I was trying to come in as an entry-level junior accountant. And she like, nah, you probably be out of here about a month. You know what I'm saying? She was like, no. So that's what I'm just like, I got so many stories.
Bro, it's so funny you say it. I have tons of them, but I'm with you. It is a sad thing because here's the other thing. It's like, there's so many gimmicks, as it relates, I love this question. What is the incarceration rate of African-American males? It's astronomical. We're in Indianapolis, in the county, we're number one. We're absolutely number one in the county. And the county jail that they just created in Indianapolis called the Justice Center. It's almost fully populated at almost 3,000. And so you look at things like that and you realize that, with all the factors, with us being Black people who are considered educated, who have a hard time finding jobs, what is the message that it is sending to people who don't have the qualifications that we have? The other thing is this. There is something to tame a lion. And the way that they tame lions as it relates to Black men is you must be caged first. Then they create these positions that say, we have these jobs for Black men who have been incarcerated. Incarcerated Black men will get hired quicker than Black men who are not incarcerated for the simple fact that you operate with a different level of freedom.
You think they make them docile?
Exactly. But here's the thing. You won't fight for upward mobility because you believe it's the best you can get. So therefore, you don't go in the organization saying, I'm looking to grow. You just looking to be
stagnant.
And that's what they want. So you find these programs to say, oh, are we hiring felons? Are we hiring felons? Think about this. You have tons of programs for Black men who've been to prison. How many you have for ones who haven't?
Because I think that says that I'll push you into illegal activity because you can't feed your family. You can't find a job. So I'm going to push you into illegal activity. Once you get your DOC number, we know we've got you. Then we'll create programs for you. But if you do something else, you're going back to prison.
There we go.
So I want to ask you this, and I'm just putting this out there. Do you think that the mayor of Indianapolis and the governor of Indianapolis have done anything to cut down on the crime and have created programs that will help out not just African-American males, but also females so that they're not doing illegal things out of necessity? Because
I think the Indianapolis mayor and the Indianapolis governor are the epitome of Willie Lynch.
Ooh, that's deep.
I think that they have done an excellent job of empowering Black women. I think when you look now, our mayor, one of the things that I fought with the mayor is I said 90%, I said 99% of the people who are the perpetrator of murder in Indianapolis are black men, and 99% of the victims are black men. Yet you have no black man of influence in your cabinet. So he went out and got a black dude, but don't nobody know him, and he's biracial, and nobody know him. I say that again, and made him the first chief diversity officer of the city of Indianapolis.
Is he from Indianapolis?
Nah, he's from like Hobart.
That's up us, Hobart, Indiana.
I was born in Hobart, but I'm from Gary. Let me just put that out.
Gary Carter.
Ben Tapper. His name is synonymous with the job. His name is Ben Tapper. So when it's all when it's all said and done, he's just there to tap. And so I don't look at that. But you had Brian Payne, who was the CEO for CICF, which is the funding organization when Indianapolis has grants that go out for crime prevention. He didn't have any black men on staff. CICF said they were going to change their mantra from focusing on crime and all those things to focusing on breaking down systemic racism. I used to meet with Brian Payne regularly, and I asked the question. I said, if you are going to now fight against systemic racism, don't you think the first thing you should do is hire a black man on your staff? I never talked to him again. But he had 3 black women. But what did the Willie Lynch letter say?
I read I was up when I was an undergrad. I read that whole Willie Lynch letter.
Out the way to get the black woman to eat from our hand. We must turn her against the black man. And it said we must empower her, but she gonna believe in me. I was once married. I'll tell y'all this story. And I thought about it. And I said, man, when your boss calls, you on time, you don't talk back, you do this, you do that. You think about his mistake before he makes it and fixes it. You are proactive before you're reactive. And I said, but for me, it's the direct opposite. Her response was, he pays me to do this. And then when you realize this, Sister Candace, when you realize, you said, the person who pays the bills runs the house.
There we go.
Let me just tell you this.
That it wasn't her that paid the bills.
Let me tell you this. We had this debate about, people saying, oh, I'm an independent single black female. No, I'm not independent. I need you to help me. I don't want to be independent. My mother and father have been married 46 years. And my aunts been married to my uncles. I've never heard one of them said that they was a strong black woman or independent woman. I've seen them be strong and do the things that they needed to do, but I've never heard them tell my daddy that, my uncles that, or any of my cousins who are married. So we talked about on the show before, the white women's movement sucked in a lot of black women, and then they've lost their way. Where when I was working for the social services, and I went to Fishers and Cromwell's and Westville and Hamilton, Hamilton County, a lot of them were soccer moms and tennis moms, and they were stay-at-home moms. So they will tell you all of that, and they'll mess up your household, but they still have the things that they need from their husband and their mate. So we have to stop confusing their situation with our situation.
The question is, Sister Candace, is when you think about the women who claim to be independent women, the challenge is, are they truly independent? The answer is no. Their wifely duties have just been transferred to their jobs.
And
because their efforts and energy are pleasing, submissive, orderly, giving, sacrificing to that white male in that position in order to keep something.
Yep.
But you don't have the same keep thought in your marriage, because you feel that by being this without the money means you're settling for less. When actually you're gaining more because you're staying together. And you're able to give this thing of unity to your children, to your family, to your community that supersedes any dollar. Real talk.
I agree.
One thing that, as we close, one thing that I would like to add to that too is that our women, and I say this all the time, I love my Black women. I love them. But they, so like you said, basically, Candace, they, went along with the movement. As the movement was happening, white women went back home.
Facts. We out of here.
And Black women over there planting the flag, waving it. And I'm just like, and it's to this day, you see generations of single mothers who have not been around a man, who don't understand the conversation with a man, don't even know what that is like. When the man speaks, they overtalk him. They, combative, and it's just mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And when go ahead.
Think on this. I said this to some young men. I said, our community is so tainted with this that now the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter compete for the same men.
Because
they all single.
They all single.
They all single with no example.
No,
stick-to-itiveness. And all of them are now one man can have a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter today. But like the Willie Lynch letter said about getting the sister on their team, he said it makes for good economics and sound sleep.
But if you talk to them about that and they knew the facts of it, they would still reject it. Not everybody, but some people would still reject it.
It sounds like we're talking crazy. It's almost like when we say stuff about order, it is perceived as you trying to make me less than.
Yep.
As opposed to the chess queen, that you have the mobility to move all over the world, but your only job is to protect the king.
It's a song. I was taking my kids to the park one day, and Eric Benet, I listened to Eric Benet, and he had a song called Femininity, and it was in 1996.
Yeah.
And I was
guys, so I get it.
I was just like, I'm like, wow. And so if you think about our music don't even promote that. It's
if you promote it, it's empowerment.
But what happens when the 50-year-old mama is listening to Shot Clock? Up?
Now I don't even know who Shot Clock is. I'm just gonna be honest.
Yep.
I mean, I see women my age. They more in tune with the 20-something-year-old vibe.
Yep.
I see women my age. I'm 50. I see women my age that act 25.
Yep.
Like real talk. Like that's their whole vibe. No lady like nothing. Talk like the 25. They the reality TV woman without the reality. Without the reality.
Yes.
For real.
We got to bring you back because
absolutely,
because this is a great convo. Like with our page, we do a lot. Like we try to stay away from sports, Eugene. We try to stay away from those type of conversations, but it's about intellectual thought, right? Yeah. And just being more savvier in our thinking. And so this is, we try to be a little different. Obviously, we're gonna have some constructive criticism of things, but it's just being more on an optimistic scale for it. And so we appreciate you, brother, for the things that you're doing. Because I got to do our new sound effect. Y'all listen. We appreciate you. You're doing a wonderful job. We would love to have you back in a couple weeks.
Anytime.
And seriously, like I told you before the show, people that are doing the work like you are doing, they think you get paid a lot of money to do it. You don't. And I keep reminding people of this. That is God's work. When you're doing stuff for your people, you're not doing this, right? You're basically doing it out the kindness of your heart for your people, for the pure love of your people.
Absolutely.
I salute you, man. And so with that, any closing thoughts?
Man, you know what, I want to say this, man, brothers, sisters, I appreciate this, man. And I will say this as a person who built my own platform. This is the way. I will say it is not an easy road to have your own media platform, but do not be discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
Do not care about the likes. Do not care about how many people are viewing. If you got one, this is about y'all putting out great content that allows our people to develop great minds so that we can develop great behaviors, because we are some great people. But I would just say this, man, y'all keep moving forward with this. I gave mine up, and I was at a crazy level, but I gave it up because I started becoming discouraged. Mm-hmm. So as y'all's brother, we together now. I'm gonna stay on y'all. Y'all stay at this, man. Y'all stay at this, and y'all keep bringing on people. Y'all let me know if y'all need any help on getting anybody. If I can help y'all do it, I'm gonna help y'all do it. I have my word on that. But stick to it, because we need avenues like this so that our people can be better educated. So I thank y'all for that.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I am super excited that you were able to come on and join us. I want to know, is there anything that you need that me and Amaru can kind of get with you and help you if you're having an event where you're going out, you're speaking to young adults, you're speaking to men, you're speaking to women, going to the schools, speaking to them, because it's unfortunate for me learning that Indiana, I knew that was behind the education, but just learning that someone that we actually grew up at, you said second in the nation in education.
We're bottom. We are almost last in the nation in education.
Yeah. And how many people really know that? I just learned that today.
Yeah. And then you learn that 74% of your people in prison are illiterate. So literacy is numero uno. Yeah. So we got to become that. But I would just say this, man. Both y'all, if y'all can go check out my book, Utopia Black. It's on Amazon by Gregory Meriweather. I think that if you look at that book, you'll definitely learn more about me, because it's a book written about it's fiction, but it's historical fiction. It's based on the history of Black Wall Street, but it's about a young man who was born in the Black Wall Street massacre, and time goes forward, and he's an old man playing chess in the park, and he teaches a young man about creating a Black utopia.
Will you do us a favor and go ahead and type in your the name of your book, so that way our viewers can see it, because some of our viewers may not be on tonight, but normally they go in, they watch it while they're at work, they watch it.
Oh, you gotta pull it up. Right on up. They came right on up.
And they will order your book and they will support. So okay, all right.
Yeah, please. Yep, thank you, brother. So check out the book, man. I think, honestly, if it weren't me, it is a blueprint that I believe our people can learn some grand things from. But I also think it's a phenomenal story. Like, it's drama filled. Y'all gonna like it.
All right. We thank you again for coming on. I look forward to doing some other projects with you. You have my information. Contact me if you need me to show up, because I'm not scared. I've always been the voice. I've always advocated. One thing that Amaru found funny, he always says that you always were so quiet on Facebook. I never knew. I never knew you had it in you, because you don't say anything. I said, oh, you just thought I was pretty. He gonna say, he said, you never say anything. I said, because I watch. I do a lot of watching, so
that's good.
And to add to what you said too, just a disclaimer, we got added to, which is pretty cool. I think it's dope. We can't just make the connection to Black Expo, and it was with Amps Magazine. And so they're going to start streaming our podcast through their page. Yeah. And so we normally do 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. I think it's likes and all that stuff, shares and all that stuff. So what happens a lot of times, our audience, because you have the time, Gary, we on Central Standard Time.
Yeah.
Y'all on Central Standard Time. So we always an hour ahead. And so what happens a lot of times, you'll see people watching it later and then coming back and liking it and all that stuff. And so
I'll do my level best to share.
We are heading in the right direction. We got some other stuff popping up, and so we appreciate you, brother. Thank you for all that you do. And with that, we'll call it a night.
Good night, everyone. See you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.